lovers, and welcome. I want to start off by saying I am so blessed to be in a position to suggest tips and tools and even products that can help you lead a tantric life of liberation and expansion. And one of my absolute favorite places to purchase spiritual and sexy items is Wands. Wands.com, spelled Wands. Wands sells, you guessed it, crystal pleasure wands, along with so much more, including yoni eggs, free bleed blankets, other amazing products for yoni steaming. I've been using these products and products similar to them for the better part of a decade, and they have been incredible allies in my journey of sexual healing and expanding my orgasmic potential. And I'm so grateful to be friends with the owner, Courtney. She's amazing. She has so generously provided us all with a discount code for 15% off, and that code is Leola. Leola. You can use it on their website, www.wands.com. Again, the code is Leola, Leola, for 15% off. I'll also make sure that this is linked in the show notes. So thank you for listening, and you're welcome for the inevitable pleasure and healing that is coming your way with these products. Now, let's get into the episode. Hello, folks. It's good to be back. I am here with another week of evolution, really. If you didn't hear, a couple weeks ago, I came on the podcast that I've been running for over 3 years and kind of had this realization of it's not feeling in alignment, and I'm evolving and I'm trying on new ways of being. And I'm going to be real with y'all. I'm still in the lack of clarity. I'm still in the messy, goopy caterpillar in the chrysalis soupiness of who am I becoming, right? And I've decided to show up anyways, and doing so hoping to inspire you that you don't need to have it all together to show up. And there are other parts of my process that I'm not showing here, and I want to be real about that as well. But here we are. Last time I kind of set this intention that I want to try on speaking into a little bit more like of a taboo nature, and also speaking into more of like what's alive for me, what's happening in my life, and how do I relate to that based on all of the teachings, all of the trainings, all of the learnings that I've done, especially around Tantra and sacred sexuality. So here we are. What is most alive for me is that I just got back from shopping for my wedding dress. And it was so interesting because going into this, I noticed myself having a lot of anxiety around going dress shopping specifically. And I was trying to feel into what about it was feeling so edgy. Like, what about dress shopping was feeling so edgy? And what I realized was what I ended up coming to was that the quality of dress shopping, wedding dress shopping, meant that I was going to be the center of attention. And I was going to be in the center of attention in service of me only. And that was my perspective. Like, being the center of attention, wedding dress shopping is for me only. And that's so vulnerable and maybe even selfish for me to be the center of attention and just get all of the attention. Because you're probably listening to this maybe, and you're like, Leola, you're the center of attention now. And when you facilitate retreats and play parties, you're the center of attention all of the time. And yes, but in those circumstances, I'm the center of attention in service. And it's not really about me in those moments. It's about me channeling source wisdom, channeling something that is bigger than me for the greater good. Whereas wedding dress shopping feels really personal and like very egoic in a way. And yeah, again, like selfish isn't the right word, but it's just all about me. Like, it's all about me. And sitting with that, like being in the energy of like, okay, like, how is it for me to be the center of attention? That's edgy. Where is the growth in this? Where is the expansion? Can I lean into this? Can I acknowledge that it's actually edgy for me? And why is it? Why is it so hard for me to be the center of attention when it's just about me. And also thinking about, I've been wedding dress shopping with one other person before, and it was super impromptu. I had a friend visiting from LA. We had just gone to lunch. She was like, we were talking about, she had gotten engaged. I was at her engagement. It was a beautiful engagement. And she had just realized that she had, we were talking about the wedding, and she was like, we haven't planned anything yet. I haven't gone dress shopping, whatever. And she was saying, like, I'd really love for you to be there when I go dress shopping. And I was like, oh, well, I'm here now. Like, why don't we just go? So that's what we did. And funny enough, that was literally like a couple of days after I did my ritual, my sex magic ritual to manifest my husband, which I talk about in the podcast. I don't remember the episode number, but I think it's called Manifest Your Life Partner. And I think it's part 1 and part 2. I honestly should have made that like a whole course or something, but you guys got it all in that podcast. So if you're interested in that, take a listen. But it was interesting that time that I went dress shopping, it was literally a couple of days before that I had done this whole ritual to call in my husband. And interestingly, there were so many signs that week. Like, I remember us spontaneously going into the dress shop and thinking, like, he's so close. There's like, it's not a coincidence that I'm calling in my life partner, and then a couple of days later I end up in a bridal shop. And the other thing too is we went to that bridal shop, and normally to go dress shopping, you need to make an appointment weeks in advance, potentially months in advance, depending on the shop that you're wanting to go to. And they just happened to have a cancellation that day. So yeah, it's interesting because in that circumstance where I went dress shopping with my friend and saw her trying these dresses, it was so fun. Like, I enjoyed it so much. And so I knew that my friends that were coming weren't going to not enjoy the experience, and that they wouldn't say yes to that experience if they didn't feel expanded and excited about being there with me for that, and also for themselves. And there's still this piece of being the center of attention when it's all about me is really vulnerable. And I've also had this sensation with, I'm like a decent singer. I can sing fairly well, but I get really nervous. I never perform in front of anyone. A couple of, like, actually right when Andrew and I started dating, I was hanging out with this one friend a lot who had a guitar, and we practiced these songs, and we're like, we're going to go perform them. And even singing in front of just him was really nerve-wracking for me. But we decided to do this open mic, and literally I sang the first song, and then we went in to sing the second song on the open mic, and I had a giggle fit in the middle of the song. I'm a nervous smiler. I'm a nervous giggler. And I think that that's why people don't think that I'm so nervous, is because I just smile, and they're like, oh, she's just happy to be here. She's so confident. And I'm like, no, actually, like, I'm really nervous. I also smile when I'm angry. It's a survival mechanism, and it's actually like a very common response to being stressed or having intense emotion. And I think that it has to do with like wanting to keep the peace, and so you just smile. But yeah, I'm a nervous smiler. I smile when I'm really, really angry. I'll like be like, oh yeah, and like be like, anyways. So where was I going? So yeah, I'm in this energy of like, okay, what if me in this experience, Tantra says that everything is sacred, and obviously it's not too much of a stretch to say trying on wedding dresses can be sacred. And what if me in my wedding gown is an expression of my godliness and is evidence for others in the same way that I show up in evidence while I'm facilitating a retreat or on Instagram or whatever it is. And some of this I'm really just, even post dress shopping, it's landing in my body. This is all very real and alive, and I'm processing it now with you guys. But yeah, that's been really fun. And also just speaking into the wedding planning process, because that's so much of my life right now. And I'm really grateful that I've created a business in life where I have a lot of spaciousness to do a lot of the planning for my wedding. We have a coordinator and I have like a wedding coach. So basically it's a little bit different than a planner because I'm still talking to the vendors and negotiating and like making more of the decisions. But she's there as my consult for me to say, hey, how many glasses do I need? And like, what do you think about this layout for the ceremony and for the dinner and all sorts of other questions. So that's been really fun. And the wedding that we're visioning is one that really is, there's this song and it's actually going to be our wedding song, and it's called Crowded Table by the Highwomen. And it's a song that's singing it's communicating this vision of, I want a house with a crowded table, and there's a place for everyone at the table, and there's a fire in the corner, and just it's really about community. And that's what we envision our wedding to be this incredible mishmash of beautiful beings that we love so dearly from different parts of our lives. And so many of our friends are contributing in different ways. Pretty much all of the vendors, not all of the vendors, but most of the vendors that I have a relationship with. Our photographer was the photographer for the Multidimensional Woman retreat that I just came back from a couple of weeks, or like this week. And, the like DJ is one of our friends in our community who's such a fun, beautiful, like party woman. But then we're also having our friends facilitate more things too. So for example, Sophia, who I also facilitated with at the retreat that I did last week, she's going to be marrying us. We have, my friend Joel Lee is coming in and facilitating a connection exercise. My friend Madeline's going to do a wine blessing, and my friend Luna is doing the flowers. Like everyone's like coming together and creating this beautiful experience. And we're really going to make it this really sexy and sacred and like playful vibe. This isn't set in stone yet, but I have this vision of Andrew and I being tied together with shibari ropes. If you're not familiar, shibari is it's like a ancient Asian, Japanese specifically, practice of like bondage. So it's like really intricate knots and ties on the body. And it was originally like made up to be a way to humiliate prisoners. So it was actually like a humiliation device, but then was adapted by the Western world, specifically in the BDSM and kink space. But it's also a really beautiful healing modality, as is so much of the kink world. And there's an episode of the podcast about conscious kink if you're interested in kind of feeling into the healing capabilities of those more darker primal desires. But Andrew and I actually met at a workshop that I was facilitating with one of our friends that was a BDSM meets Tantra, and she facilitated, I did some Tantra exercises and then she did some shibari exercises. And so she came in and, facilitate this exercise, and everyone paired up. And by some wild coincidence, Andrew was the one that wasn't chosen. We had odd numbers, and he was the one that didn't get picked for kickball shibari. He was the one that didn't get picked for the kinky exercise. And because I was the other facilitator, I was meant to be the one to balance the numbers. So then Andrew and I, by fate, got paired up, which is insane, because if I were at that party as a participant, he's so attractive and charismatic, like I would race to be his partner. And so it was just such a coincidence that he wasn't partnered. So then we got to partner. And the funny thing is we didn't even end up dating after that. It took many more months. And that's another whole story on the podcast if you've missed it. But great story. That's just a little piece of it. But at the wedding, we are also envisioning that, one of our friends ties us together to like honor how we met, but also to honor the sacred bond that we're creating. We're tying the knot. So it's going to be really fun. I'm really excited. I'm really enjoying planning for it as well. Another thing that's alive and real and a great segue is that I have been summoned. So If you're not clear on what that is, or I was served, I think that's the right word. I've been served. I've been served. So I was out in the backyard measuring because we're having our wedding in our yard. We're having our get it. We were waiting to have a big wedding for when we bought property here in Austin, and now we have that land, and so we're planning the wedding. So I was in the backyard measuring the how big the space was so that I could decide how many tables I wanted to get and how I wanted to lay them all out. And I walk around and there's this man just standing in our front yard, and it kind of freaked me out. First of all, because I could tell energetically that this was like something big and important and slightly weird was about to happen. And also because we live kind of down a really long driveway up on a hill. Like you can't see our house from any road. And so it's like would be weird for someone to just like drive up and get out. And I don't know. So it kind of freaked me out. And then basically he was like, I'm just the messenger, but you are being sued. And I was like, what? This is so bizarre. Long story short, we're still in it, but there was a fire that was part of the reason that I decided to leave LA, just because I was like, I'm kind of just feeling like the universe is pushing me out of LA. And I talked all about this also on another episode of the podcast. I think it's called Soul Initiations, because that's what it was. It was a super traumatic experience for me, having my home and belongings up in flames, and it was just not a good vibe. But it clearly like wasn't my fault at all. But the fire would like started in this area where 3 different properties kind of came together in West Hollywood. And my garage like was, very affected. My car was completely totaled. And basically 3 years later, I'm like, they're still trying to figure out who's to blame and how to get money. And myself and my car were already like taken out of the investigation, but someone's trying to get money and they're pulling me in, and it's totally unfair. And I'm very clearly the victim. And it's such a growth edge, and it's such a moment of like learning and trust, and like, I feel so grateful. Like even in the process, like something like this would have stressed me out so much years ago, even like a year ago. And I feel really proud of where I am today, that I can just like joke about it and be like, this is all going to be fine. I've built a business in abundance where I can handle this. I also have built the connections in my life to be able to support me through this. Like, they're throwing around so many words. Like I looked at the paper and I was like, I really don't know what they're suing me for. I don't understand these papers. And then Andrew looked over it, and then Andrew suggested that we send it to my friend Lydia, who funny enough is like, I met Andrew at her house, and she's an incredible lawyer. So she's supporting and Andrew's supporting, and I just feel so taken care of in it. And I feel like I don't need to stress. There's an element of needing to be in my masculine and be on top of things and check my email and make sure that things are running smoothly. But there's also this part of me that gets to surrender and trust and relax and flow. And that's one thing that I really wanted to bring forth and talk about today, because I feel like polarity and like masculine and feminine, and talking about the divine masculine and divine feminine, and if you're a woman, being in your feminine, and if you're a man, being in your masculine, and holding those pillars, like it's so trendy right now, and everyone's talking about it. Even the very last episode of this podcast, I had on Damian Bowler, who has an amazing perspective on polarity. If you want another little piece of this, I recommend checking out that one. And I want to be clear, like I love polarity. I think it's an amazing tool. It's an incredible piece to use, and I see that it can pigeonhole people, and it can put people back into a more traditional way of being that is almost in some ways tarnishing like some of the rights and like movement that we've made as men and women in terms of equality. And it's also just like limiting overall to say, I'm just going to be feminine, or I'm just going to be masculine. And I don't know. I think that everyone creates their own relationship that's perfect for them. And I feel really grateful to have that. And I'm also not going to pretend that like Andrew and I have it all figured out. And there are parts of us that are very much maturing. But what I do love is that we use polarity, and the polarity makes things really hot and spicy for us. And Andrew is mostly in his masculine and is a very masculine man. And I am mostly in my feminine in relationship. And I am a very feminine woman. And I love being masculine. I don't want to like be shy about it. I really like doing things. I really like to be productive. I'm ambitious as fuck, and I always have been, and I don't want to give that up. And there are even moments in my relationship where I want to be the more penetrative, take charge force. And Andrew likes that. He does. And he likes being able to be more of the leader in certain aspects of our relationship, and to have clear moments where he gets to take charge and I get to soften and I get to trust, and it feels so good and it feels so juicy, and I'm a full fuck yes to that too. And there are moments where he's like in a mood. He's in a mood and I get to be like, babe, let me hold you. What can I do for you? How can I support you? And if he's being too moody, I get to set boundaries and be like, I'm going to call you forth. Like you're in your immature feminine. And there's moments where I'm in my immature feminine and he's in his immature masculine. I'm in my immature masculine. But I have to say that the work that I've done around masculine and feminine in the energetics and understanding my inner feminine versus my inner masculine has set me up so beautifully for this relationship, as well as for life, for business. Like I have like so much of my success I have to thank for cultivating both my inner feminine and my inner masculine. And, you know, talking about something like planning a wedding, like I love being the one that's organizing and doing all the logistics. There are moments where it's a lot and it's frustrating, but I also have support. And there are pieces where I love just being the girl and knowing where to hand off. And it's the same, you know, in my business as well, being someone that is, again, highly ambitious, running a multi-six-figure business, running a business that I want to grow and that I want to evolve, and that takes a lot of strategy and planning and showing up when it's hard, and knowing when it's worth that, has been a really beautiful, delicate balance. And one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this conversation forth and talk about my life right now from this lens of masculine and feminine, and exploring being a woman and being a woman who's getting married, and what it means to be the center of attention, and all of those pieces, is because this month in the Higher Love Club, we're going to be talking about the divine feminine in a really deep, powerful way. We're going to be talking about all of these incredible archetypes of the feminine and knowing how to move through them to create this incredible range. And that's one of the things that I love about being a woman, is that we have this ability to tap into a range, and it actually is what makes us really hot. And I truly feel like the relationships that last between a man and a woman, or one that is, you know, taking on the intention of one being more masculine, one being more feminine, and having this polarity, is that the ones that I see that work really well are the ones where there is a wide range, because that range is what's really attractive and sexy. Like back in the day, very often men would have their wife, and then they would have their courtesan, or their whore, their mistress, if you will. And to really make long-term relationships work, and especially monogamy work, I feel like there needs to be range in the feminine expression. That's what keeps things interesting and exciting, is trying on different roles and being in this sacred play, this like, you know, artistry, this like using our divine feminine expression to make magic and make love. And it's really beautiful, especially coming off of the multidimensional women's retreat. Hello, lovers. Please bear with me for a brief interruption with a vulnerable share and offer from my heart. So when I first began my journey with spiritual intimacy and sacred sexuality, all I could afford were books and free podcasts. I was just out of college in my early 20s and honestly very, very broke. And I'm so grateful for all the complimentary, kind words and affordable wisdom that have gotten me where I am today. Price shouldn't deter you from healing. It shouldn't deter you from living the life you love or from reclaiming the most powerful energy in your body. It's my belief that time and commitment are also very powerful investments, especially when you're just dipping your toes in the water. You'll know when it's time to make the bigger cash investments in your journey, but let's begin together today with free love from my heart to yours. As you've already discovered, this podcast is free and it includes so much life-changing wisdom, but I'd also love to guide you to some free offers that are on my website, including a downloadable sexual shadow work workbook and a pleasure positive meditation. Both of these resources are amazing places to start in integrating the tantric principles of expansion and liberation into your life. And you can access these at www.talktantratome.com/free or find a direct link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode. So I was in Mexico last week facilitating this retreat where we're diving deep, especially in archetypes with the divine feminine that maybe are a little bit challenging for us in the modern world to relate to because we live in a very masculine world as is. And the feminine archetypes that are, deemed acceptable or are celebrated are more light. They're like light and love, like the mother and the virgin, the maiden, the lover girl, the one who needs to be rescued. Like those are all so celebrated. And I love those archetypes. And there's this other part of the feminine that is not as celebrated and is even feared. Like we have the woman who is wise, who is empowered, who is sovereign and autonomous, the oracle. She's intuitive, and we've made her out to be this scary villain. We've made her out to be this witch, when in reality, witch etymologically comes from the words wise woman, which means wise woman. But we've made her out to be bad and wrong and scary. And it's my belief that we've done that because she's so powerful. And if she's so powerful, then how can we control her? And if we can't control her, then she'll run amok and she'll influence other women. And then how will we get people to pay their taxes and like do what we want them to do and like control them, basically. Another archetype of the feminine that we, often ostracize is the seductress, the one who is really connected to her sensuality and her body and her life force. Like when you are a sensually empowered woman, when you know your ability to influence and inspire people around you with your way of being, you are so powerful. And unfortunately, the shadow side of that, which is the one who uses her seduction to manipulate and to take and to spin drama and create chaos, like they've made that be the face of the seductress, when in reality, there is so much to be said for the ability that the feminine has in her essence to inspire and to seduce the world into a greater good and to be connected to her life force, her sexiness, the energy that brought her into this world. That connection is so important for her to move in this world as the temple that she is. Another archetype that has been like hidden away and like feared even is the wild woman, the woman who is like in her full expression. She's angry, she's sad, she's emotional, she's bipolar. There were moments where I was like, I started to work on this Tantra journey and especially develop my inner feminine. And I was like, oh my God, am I bipolar? Because I was feeling feelings that I never let myself feel. Like my default was I need to be controlled and contained. And I became this anal control freak. And when I started to lean into Tantra and working with my feminine, I started to relax and flow. And these emotions that I had bottled up because I didn't want to seem crazy started to come out. But they came out in really healthy ways. And that's the important thing with the wild woman is the wild woman especially needs containment. Otherwise, she does go into a space of maybe pulling people into her drama or taking up a lot of space and not being mindful of others in the space. But there's lots of power in that because it's really vulnerable. It's really vulnerable to feel our feelings and to emote. And when we lean into the wild woman, we become this walking permission slip. And that's so, so powerful. Another archetype of the divine feminine that I find has been really shut down is the well-nourished woman. This was another one that we explored deeply on the retreat. I feel like she's kind of related to the queen energy as well because she's so well supported and she knows that she will be like, when you prioritize yourself, you prioritize everyone else because you can't really fully give in an authentic way and you can't give at full capacity unless you're full yourself. And so many women have been taught to martyr and to self-sacrifice and to put others before themselves. And it's really a disservice to the feminine. One of the biggest things that polarity taught me in terms of slipping into my feminine in my relationship was around being nourished, being well-resourced, taking care of myself, not having hard conversations when I haven't slept well, not being a yes to something if I'm not really clear and able to make that decision, not sacrificing, just saying no more. Like Andrew and I's relationship got so much sexier when I just started saying no to things more and not like pushing myself to show up in ways that weren't really honoring me. And so with this journey of, masculine and feminine in Tantra, the work is about not choosing one or the other, but recognizing that both of these energies exist within us, masculine and feminine. And the journey is about integrating them both and maturing them both so that we come from this really balanced whole place. And then we can show up in relationship as a whole person rather than show up in relationship needing completion. Because when you show up needing completion, that's where you create codependent dynamics. And we're in this gorgeous time in the history of the planet where we have this level of equality so that we can come into relationship in wholeness, but we can also choose to use tools like polarity and the unique bodies that we're born into, which have a gender, which have a feminine or masculine, lean to them and trust that and play and create our own perfect sauce. So for Andrew and I'm probably in the feminine 60 to 70% of the time, and he's in his masculine 60% of the time. And I'm in my masculine 30 to 40% of the time. He's in his masculine 30 to 40% of the time. And there's been seasons where I'm way more in my feminine. And I will say that in some ways that's increased over time. But there have been other seasons where, even right now, so another little backstory, here's what's going on. I was on retreat in Mexico and I actually had to leave early because Andrew had to go into emergency surgery and he was on his way to LA. He was going to LA for a little overnight trip. We both got invited to a concert that our friends were going to. And obviously I was a no because this retreat has been been in the works for 6 months. And so then Andrew was a no too, because he doesn't usually like to travel. And then, in the last minute, he's like, you know what? I actually think I want to go to LA. I think I want to go to this concert. On the flight there, his appendix gets super inflamed. He has appendicitis. He thinks he just has a really bad stomach ache. But by the time he was landing, it was intolerable. He went straight to the ER. And that's a really powerful thing too, like where Andrew kind of needed to be in his feminine and listen to his body. So many men, and I could even see Andrew doing this, I could see me doing this, are like, I don't need to go to the doctor, I'm fine, like I'm good, like I don't need and in reality, if he hadn't have gone to the doctor, if he hadn't gone to the ER, he could have died. Like that's, and I mean, in the modern world, that's much less likely, but if you don't treat appendicitis immediately, and treating appendicitis basically means that you get your appendix removed. So it's like a major surgery where they cut open your stomach, they take out an organ. So it's like, it's pretty intense. And even if your appendix does rupture, then what happens is all of the toxins go through your body and it's a much more intense recovery situation. So I'm so happy that he was in his feminine, listened to his body, trusted it, trusted his intuition. Like, you know what? I'm just going to go to the ER just to make sure. And he went, and they were very much like, wait, good call on coming to the ER. And he immediately went into surgery. And so for me, I've been in my masculine a bit in this process because he's been in recovery and he's been, hurting, and I've had to take care of him a bit and really from an energy of, okay, let me hold a little bit more of the burden around the house and, in our lives in general, let me book the flights, let me pick the seats, let me check us in, which normally he's like the one that always checks us in for the flight because he's quite particular about making sure that we've got all the things, and me ordering the Ubers and even carrying the bags, and me just being in a provider role, which has been so interesting. And also there's been this thing for him where it's like, it's hard, like emotionally going through a major trauma like that, like that's traumatic to suddenly have to go to the ER. And I've been called forth to have to hold the pillar of, yeah, feel your feelings about this, be in your emotions about it. It's okay for you to have emotions about this, but also have boundaries around like, and don't project your emotions onto me. Don't pick a fight with me. I'm trying to help you, and like being in that sort of role as well. And I think that all the women can resonate with that energy of like, we're in the moods, especially around our period, and being like, I'm committed to being in a bad mood. Like I'm cranky. And it's been a bit of that energy. And he's also been so amazing and such a trooper. And I also want to just like double down on the fact that I fucking love this man, and I love his expression, and I love that he gets to experience this. He gets to experience a partner that will drop everything while I'm off on a retreat working, supporting other women, and being in the delicate balance of, I've made a commitment to the transformation of these women, and I have to leave early to be with my husband because my family is my number one priority. And also trusting that decision, which was, it's funny because the decision was easy. Like it was like immediately like, I need to be with my husband. He's not at home. He's in another state, like very far away. He is in emergency surgery. Like there could be complications. I want to make sure that I'm there for him to support him with the recovery and, all of the bits and pieces. But it was also hard in that this is something that I've been planning for 6 months. Again, I've made this commitment to these women, and I also don't want to leave because I'm having fun and I'm enjoying this. And this is like the way that I make love to the world. And in the end, though, it was just very clear, I need to be with him. I need to go to him, and trusting that my decision to do that was actually in service of all of the women there, because it was showing the way that we transition between our multidimensionality and what it means to consider your values and what's important to you as a woman, and show up in alignment with those values and in integrity with those values. And I also had the blessing of being in a position where I was co-facilitating with my amazing friend, Sophia. We had one day left that was mostly like play and was less intense facilitation. And I actually got to teach her how to facilitate the one thing that I was facilitating that day, which was a BDSM workshop. So I got to teach Sophia how to facilitate BDSM, which was really fun. I mean, it was an interesting thing because it was like, we found out Andrew was in the hospital. There were like several hours. There was like 5 or 6 hours of just like major stress because I wanted to just get on the first flight and just be with him immediately. And unfortunately, there weren't any flights till the next day. So I kind of had to chill and wait it out. Also, he was like preparing for surgery and then going into surgery. And like, it felt so good when he was complete with surgery and I got the call and I got to speak to him and he was like, I'm on drugs. I'm so high, but the surgery went well and like, I'm going to be okay. And then I could really relax and be like, okay, I still think it's important that I go be with him, help with the recovery, make sure that he's not all by himself in LA in a hospital. And now let's like talk about the rest of the retreat and how can I support you? And so, yeah, it was that night that, you know, it's like 11 p.m. and we had this really full day that day of like horseback riding and doing shamanic practices in the morning and then going to a tequila tasting and talking about the wise woman and our intuition and trust. And then it's like 11 p.m. and we're like kind of exhausted. I'm like emotionally exhausted from also just the trauma of being like, my husband's at the hospital. Is he okay? I don't know what's going on. And he's getting major surgery right now. And then being like, okay, he's okay. Let's celebrate. We're exhausted. Let's like flog you. Let's teach you how to do impact play and spank. And anyways, the range that we live in. And I really feel like I'm able to do so much in my life because of the way that I've cultivated this relationship between the feminine and the masculine and making sure I have enough flow and spaciousness and I'm well nourished, but also I feel productive enough that my mission and my purpose and my masculine, it feels really fulfilled and feels really satiated at the same time. There was something else that wanted to come through on this, and it was coming as I was speaking, and now I can't remember. So I just want to hold a second and think if I remember. I don't remember. Maybe it'll come back through. But yeah, that's been what's alive lately. It's been big. It's been like such a big moment where there's lots of needing to balance between the masculine and the feminine. And I feel that I've been able to become a better space holder as a masculine in my masculine because of how deep I've explored my feminine. And I've become much better at surrendering to the masculine, surrendering to Andrew, being receptive, being in flow because of how well I've cultivated my inner masculine. And about like literally a week or 2 weeks before I met Andrew, I actually did this ceremony of inner union. I did this training where we worked a lot with masculine and feminine energies. And then I did a ceremony of inner union, of marrying myself. And I think that that was a really important piece for me in having the relationship that I have today, not just with my husband, but with myself primarily. Like I'm the one that I'm going to spend my entire life with. And I need to be in right relationship with the different parts of me. And it's also deeply impacted how I show up in sisterhood, like healing my feminine, healing my sisterhood wounds, healing my relationship to these different archetypes within me has allowed me to connect deeper to the women in my life. And also connecting to my inner masculine has done the same thing. Like there are moments in so many of my friendships, even on the retreat, we joked that like I was the daddy of the retreat. I was kind of in my masculine because I was handling a little bit more of the logistics than Sophia until I had to leave. And then it was like, all right, Sophia, you get to be daddy now. You get to handle the logistics. And seeing her, another great example of a woman who is able to be in the flow and surrender and trust. And then seeing her be like, okay, this is what I need from you. I asked her before I left, what do you need from me? And her being able to take action and like rally and support me so that I could be in my feminine and be in my emotions and be in my trusting of how I needed to leave and to be with my husband. So it's all a balance. It's all a dance. It's all gorgeous and such a flow. And again, we're going to be exploring these topics really in depth in the Higher Love Club over the next 3 months. So I think I already mentioned this month, May 2024, we're going into the Divine Feminine. We're talking about the Divine Feminine archetypes. We're talking about the wounded feminine and the shadow feminine and how to integrate those parts so that we can really step into our divine feminine, our queen feminine. And again, this is really relevant for both men and women. Men so that they can connect to their own inner divine feminine, but also so that they can be a better support for the women in their life. And then next month, we'll be going into the divine masculine and, talking about the masculine archetypes, talking about the wounded, unhealed parts of the masculine and healing those bits. And then in July, we'll be talking about inner union, which funny enough, July is actually Andrew and I's wedding anniversary as well. We started dating in July 2 years ago. We technically got legally married July last year. We're having our big blowout wedding this year. So if there's any confusion, we just had like a courthouse ceremony last year in July. This year in November, we want to commit to this marriage in front of all of our friends and family and the people that we love and have a really big ceremony. But anyways, so the Higher Love Club, if you're not familiar, is my membership. It's a place to connect with people from all over the world and in different parts of their life, and to talk about how can we create a love that transcends the ordinary for ourselves and for the world. And every month in the membership is a different theme, and it's kind of like each month is like a mini course. So these next 3 months are a series of divine feminine, divine masculine, and then inner union. And I'm really excited about it. It's also super affordable. It's currently under $50 to join. Or if you join for the year, you get even more of a price break. And then you also get Turned On by Life, which is my signature Tantra course, a journey through the Kundalini chakra system, for free. So you get that for free if you join for the year as well. And as soon as you join Higher Love Club, you also get access to over 30 hours of incredible teachings. Basically, you get access to the past months, all the past mini courses. So last month we talked about red tantra and like sexuality. A couple of months ago, we talked about self-love. We talked about the inner child a while back. So many amazing, gorgeous topics in there to elevate your life. So yeah, I would love to see you inside to, get a little bit more of like a real world context into these archetypes and in this world, and to give you evidence of different ways of being with the divine feminine, the divine masculine, inner union, polarity, etc. So thank you so much for opening yourself up to this sexy, fun, spontaneous conversation. Thank you for being along with me on this ride. I'm feeling so grateful to be here and really curious to see how this evolves. If you're liking this type of podcast, this type of content, please let me know. I'm kind of feeling into how I'm evolving, how things are flowing, and I'd love to hear your feedback. But thank you again. Have a sexy and spiritual day, and I'll catch you next week on Talk Tantra to Me. Ta-ta. Oops, just kidding. Still here. I have one last thing for y'all. I want to say that the internet is a really, really special place. It's why we're all here right now. And many of us, including me, wouldn't have discovered Tantra or sacred sexuality if it weren't for this nifty invention of the 20th century. And almost none of you would have found my work and my vision without it. I love the internet, and I deeply desire to expand beyond it, to experience more real life love, community, and connection. So I invite you to check out upcoming Tantra events at www.talktantratome.com/events, or click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to give you a big squeeze in real life. Okay, now that's it. Ta-ta for real. Ta-ta.